Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Evening.
7:30, so let's crack on. Welcome everybody. Item number 1 is to receive any apologies for absence and declarations of interest. Joe.
We've had 3 apologies, Peter, Ian and Sharon.
Thank you. Declaration of interest? Have a look around and go.
They're both.
Okay, good. It's this point where I can close the meeting if there are comments from a member of the public. Any member of the public wish to make a comment?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll close the meeting. John, far away.
Because of what I do within the village, several people have contacted me wanting me to ask you, the Parish Council, when it'll probably be brought up hopefully on 4.3, open spaces, when the benches are going to be replaced.
Yeah.
And also on 4.2, what is the update regarding the easement on PEX copies? Has it been agreed? If so, how much has the Parish Council received? And 3, if it hasn't, what is your procedure from now on?
Okay, yeah, that will be covered in 4.2. Yeah, that's no problem. 4.3 benches. Yeah, okay. Anybody else? Okay, right, let's go to the closed session then. Item number 2 is to approve the minutes of the previous Parish Council held on the 2nd of July. So there was a slight issue getting these out to you, but they were on the website, so if you've seen them and you're happy with them, can I have a proposal that I sign them or amend them? I'm happy to propose that they students will second them.
I'll have to abstain now.
Oh, I can. So that's 4 out of the 6.
I
So
remember the meeting.
we'll be okay. So 4 in favour and 2 abstentions. Okay, thank you. Right. Matters arising. 3.1. Report from Wicksteed following the survey of the plague mark. You'll remember that this was done some time ago, and the report was given to us, and you've all had it.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can just have a quick whiz through it. As soon as I got up on this thing, sorry.
It's not so expensive, not bulk supply.
Yeah, but I suspect they'll be delivered to us, won't they?
Oh, goodness me, sorry. Cough sputter.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know whether there wasn't anything urgent that I remember seeing.
Can I make a...
Yeah, of course you
my having read it and gone through all the bits and bobs and bolts and everything, there's quite a number of things that are low, whether or not they're needing attention,
Yep.
and most of the rest are medium or moderate. And the impression I have is, gosh, isn't this a tired little playground?
Mm-hmm.
And to do all that work for 700 and blah blah, no, 2,000 pounds.
2,252
Yeah, I just think, well, could we consider doing something a bit more dramatic and major by throwing a few more funds at it? Whether it's crowdfunding that does it, or asking around the village, or whatever else.
I think, well, my personal view is that the actual equipment within it is still in good condition. I know the park is in need of attention, but the equipment, considering how old it is still in remarkably good condition.
Well, it's actually, my point is that it's saying it's not in good condition, it's okay.
It doesn't meet with some of the current regulations, I think it was saying.
Yeah.
I thought it was also in the flooring, wasn't it?
No, there's a couple of objects by the house and stuff. There's some of the spacing is no longer considered acceptable due to trucking and stuff. But it's like anything with open safety, if it exists, necessarily
you're okay.
by it, you
Yes.
wouldn't be allowed to put it in now.
Oh yes. Head and neck probe test.
My comment about the flooring was that a lot of it was to do with filling the gaps, but it said it was going to be a temporary measure. So
Yes.
nearly £2,500 to temporarily replace the.
Yeah.
When I actually, I mean, obviously they've done the survey, but I don't think it's just about the gaps. When I've been there, whole sections of it lived out. So I don't know what they do with the wet floors to fill the gaps, but
I do agree with you as well, and I think that material is incorrect material for the location of where the park is. I have my godchildren here, and I fell over once, and this was in the summer when East Week was on, and Mark took them up there, and there was a couple of people that were commenting that a grandfather had fallen over. So I think Wick's due to being great, but they haven't really brought the problem to attention that I don't think the flooring is suitable for the location, because the moss is horrendous on it, and it's. I went down there last week, and it's still, you can slip on some of them because of the moss. And
yes, definitely.
I did ask them, sorry, just to interrupt, because we did at the meeting, we did talk about them quoting for new flooring, but I need to send them photographs which I've taken this week, because it said the surfacing will be inspected by the inspector when he carries out the inspection. However, he will be unable to quote for overlaying the existing tiles with wet pour. If this is something you would like a quote on, initially can you send in photos showing the area that you're considering overlaying with the dimensions, which actually I haven't got. And then it said about, I mentioned that the tiles get slippery. I said, have you tried cleaning them with a power washer as normal?
Yes.
Normally tiles aren't slippery.
It does say that in general, doesn't it? Recommended tile surfaces are clean to remove algae residue and reduce potential slipping. In fact, special washing tile surface would affect the best cleaning method. It would require a constant water source.
Yeah, but I said there are so many gaps in it that half the stuff just disappears down and maybe sort of comes up again. But also things should improve now that the trees, it's a lot more open than it was. So I'm hoping that.
but it's still
It
bad
won't-
there now.
It's bad there now because it's residual. But I'm hoping that if we can sort of start again,
What, clean it
yes,
off and
or
then
even
hope.
a whole new surface, the general cause of the algae has been removed or reduced. I would
It's a
suggest.
bit of me saying, well, what's going to take for us to bite the bullet on to play
Mhm.
Well, we had some quotes, didn't we? Just got some quotes.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes.
we did.
For some equipment a few years back.
Yeah, probably find those.
So but I tend to agree. I wouldn't necessarily spend that money updating what we've got. There doesn't seem to be anything significant there that's going to be a massive impact.
I mean, but still reuse some of the decent
Yeah.
enough equipment. Sorry, Kieran.
I was just saying, I mean, we need to be a little bit clear. So the equipment is okay, it's not the criticising anything. It's the surface that's
Yeah.
The main
we
issue.
do need to address.
Graham, I cut it last fortnight, went all my length on that piece on the right hand side where the swing is. And I did speak to Ian Stott 2 months or more ago and suggested that somebody went to have a look at the surface area in Hemmingford Abbott,
Yeah,
because I used to do Hemmingford Abbott's maintenance for them, and they have got a non-slip surface on their swing areas and slide areas, and how much it would cost to do it, I haven't got a clue, but it's certainly worth, and it's not in patches, it is one whole area.
I think that's what we discussed at the last meeting, that you were going to get quotes from Joe.
Yeah, and that's why we were going to get the...
Is it
record.
under an area with trees like our park, John, or is it in a
No, well, we're not under an area with trees now. You could actually completely make ours non-tree problem
Right.
if you took the 2 or 3 trees down. But it's worth going to look at.
He did go and look. We have, I have been in contact with their clerk about it. That's why we were going to get a quote for the wet pour surface.
Is that what it's called?
Mm.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Can I suggest then that we try and accelerate that
Yeah,
for next month's meeting?
yeah. Would somebody be
because-
willing to help
Yeah.
with getting the
Can we help
dimensions
on
of the
that?
area?
Yeah.
Because I've got pictures.
Maybe we could do it too, couldn't we? we could ask for a quote for doing the bits, or doing the whole thing,
Yeah.
see which is,
Should we just put, or I don't know, either put a parish council volunteer group together or ask the volunteers, if there is volunteers, to do a scrub down on that just as a temporary, a temporary situation until we manage to get some sort of surface down there.
Would it take a good, like, jet washing?
yeah?
We've
yeah.
done that
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
We
yes.
took the water across and
Yes,
jet washed now.
yes.
I don't mind helping with that at
But
all.
as they point out, it's the water supply.
Exactly.
So
Maybe
if
that's
hands
a
off
lot
in,
of water.
if hands off in the water,
Well, I'm offered it, I just said we did it before. Now that we're
that was 2 years ago,
metered,
wasn't it? That was 2
now
years
that
ago.
we're metered,
Graham, I jet washed it way back when we did it, and the lady in the corner house has very kindly offered us access to her water there,
Yes.
and therefore we can get a hose right across to a jet washer.
do you think with these days, I'm just thinking, people are moving to smart meters and water meters and...
I think with the usual gave her a bottle of wine and a bit of a,
I don't think you
not exactly payment, but that was very convenient. Just run the hose across from there.
Okay.
So, because even if we did get a quote for next whenever, it
It's
wouldn't be
going to
late.
take a few months
Oh,
to
yeah.
put it together.
Right, so we'll...
But like I said, the actual equipment, I think there's only one, the gate they've said, just the screw.
Yes, it's too fast, yes,
And
yes.
then the motor, like the U-bolts.
It's quite a... Yeah.
We need to not strangle ourselves on the fence or the gate.
Yeah, I did notice about the fence they took on, and you were getting the fencing done, and I don't know if that's been, it's a risk of someone putting their head through the gaps, I think they were saying. They wouldn't recommend fences like that, but I
Yes.
don't know how,
Well, the fence, yeah.
high was successful.
Yes, I mean, if you start putting new fences, it just gets different. Where do you stop? Okay.
That's right.
So we'll have a good scrubber prior to autumn.
And we hold on this quote for now.
We
I'll go back.
push them
Yeah,
for
we'll go
quote,
back. Yeah.
and I'll help Joe with the sizes, and we'll try and get 2 quotes, one for patching the
Yeah.
not patching.
Repair.
You're going to dig out the old, so you can get the quotes just for that last
I'll
time.
see. Yeah, I'll see if I can find them.
Well, that is for equipment.
I'd be interested to see what the sort of cost is for equipment, so I agree that the equipment there is quite tired and dated now, a lot of it, and
I think it's
it's
more,
not.
more dated, isn't it? It's not exactly the
I think the two
I think
pieces
it's
of
difficult for different age
You've grown
groups.
older.
The requirements are different.
The
So
time-
swing just doesn't have the room.
The tiny slide is really only suitable for really small babies,
Mm.
and then the other one hasn't got a decent enough ladder, so until they're able to climb up, there's not really anything
Nothing
in
in between.
between.
And the other one that really concerns me is that motorbike thing, because I don't think there has been accidents, but those things so easily can smash kids in the face. You know, when you're sort of doing
Supervision required at all times.
Obviously.
Obviously.
Okay.
I've just
Okay.
found some of the information sent, but if I put it on the next agenda, then we can discuss it.
what's this from the other parish council.
This is from July, August last year.
Last year.
Yeah, when I think Just contacted them about we talked about updating.
It's just those prices from Whitstable as well.
Yeah, these are all from Wicksteed. So we've got a price for a flat swing, cradle swing, springers, single Simon toddler unit, large multi unit.
Yeah. Put flooring on top of you,
Yeah.
if you can have flooring on top.
Well, I'll send this out for next time,
Okay.
so we've got some ideas.
And are we also contacting the company that deal with the flooring that's done Hillingford Abbots?
I think it might be. I think it was the
Wicksteed
same.
again.
I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure it was.
So that was good. So we haven't had an inspection for a little while. So, yeah, and there's the usual thing that we were told last time that we haven't done is the we do need some signs on there as the name of the playground, address, postcode, the telephone numbers, etc. Which you also consider filling up. They're telling us. So that's good. Okay.
Do you want me to look into that? Because we've got those signs made by
Yeah,
Archie Signs,
yeah.
we've still got all the details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good.
That's on sheet page 4, is it? I think it's on page 4, I think. Yeah, it's the last page. Shows us all the things you showed.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, thank you. Right, moving swiftly on. Okay, item number 3.2, update following meeting with Constabulary. Now that appeared in your supporting documents. Report from Peter. So, for the benefit of others or those who might not have seen it, following on from last Parish Council meeting, Ian Bates arranged a meeting at his house on the 22nd of August with Sergeant Phil Priestley of Cambridgeshire Constabulary to discuss speeding traffic and nighttime HGV ban violations. Invited Ken App, Andy Bush, Margaret Charlow and Peter, and he sent over information from previous speed watch operations and from a data logger that has been borrowed from Nick George, Haulage Company. Further reports have been sent and I will send them separately. I don't intend to go through them all, but you have seen pages and pages of interesting figures from cars and things, with a 95 miles per hour recorded somewhere.
Yes.
Sergeant Priestley has made the following suggestions after discussion around the issues of both. So, there's the two things. Speeding traffic, he has requested that the village update speed watch traffic monitoring over a 2-week period. He's presently looking into the availability of equipment. He advised that collecting as much information over a 2-week period would allow him to take this to his superiors. They show there was a problem in Hilton, which needs to be addressed. He was appreciative of all the data, but emphasised the need to be a 2-week speedwatch operation. There was discussion around this and how previously speedwatch had been effectively shut down. Some not keen on it, but others were, and it was up for a short period of time, because it's only 2 weeks. Sergeant Priestley is going to source the equipment. Once we know when the equipment is available, volunteers will be sourced to help carry it out over that period. The intention is that this is a visible survey and not carried out in any covert way. Sergeant Priestley does not want villagers to put themselves at risk, and abuse from motorists to speedwatch data would be in addition to all the other data provided. And he's also requested Sergeant Priestley to investigate if there are any data loggings installed that could be lent long-term to the village. So that was the conclusion to the speeding vehicles. And you're moving on to the nighttime HGV ban. Sergeant Priestley came up with an idea of creating a project for a trainee police officer to be involved in as part of their 2-year apprenticeship. Sergeant Priestley advised that there was a need within the force for a series of projects for these officers, and it would possibly be a 3-month project, and this could be rotated to new officers. He is proposing that the trainees are provided with an unmarked vehicle and come at unannounced times to the village and monitor what's happening. They will then be able to record data, stop vending vehicles and report back to haulage operators about the violation. An officer has been identified. I don't mention the name because the chances are it's like my company. He doesn't know yet, so he ought to hear from his superiors rather than from us. Lives locally and waiting for a date when that might start. This sounds like a positive action and one that might have a positive effect on reducing nighttime HGV bans. So that's good on Ian to organise that. So it addresses both speeding and the HGVs, or whatever, but it's sort of a soon sort of thing.
But it says to me a 3-month project, and you're suggesting it could involve them locking corners and nagging people at night. But do we get to know what the overall project is?
Well, I presume it's the same thing, is to prove that there is a problem.
Well, I can presume that.
Yes.
But would they share that with us? Can we ask them?
Parts. I mean, we can ask Sergeant Priestley what the overall intention is.
It would be good to get an output of that project, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, just have a sense of what are the objectives,
Yes.
when we're going to hear.
But I get the more than impression it's going to be a 3-month project for 4 trainees, so it's not just going to be a 3-month project.
Sure.
So it should be ongoing.
All more reason to know what they're up to then.
Okay.
Can I ask, when I read this, I was slightly confused. If we've got a certain amount of data, okay, this sergeant needs more data to be able to go back and ask his powers that be, could they please then put a little bit more police presence here for speeding purposes. This is point 1. But he wants us to monitor for another 2-week period. That's fine. I'm sure nobody objects to that. But the bit that confuses me is if we are actually all standing there so people can actually see that we have these speed watch big cameras there, surely then the people that are regularly going through are going to know that we're there, so they then will reduce their speed because they know it's being monitored. So where do we get to? So after 2 weeks they go, we haven't got a problem there. Surely if we could possibly borrow Nick George's thing again or something, so it's covertly put there without a person, so no one's going to get injured, we would get a better, more realistic data. Kieran, any answers on that?
Well, I think you sort of have to go down that routine though, don't you? Because if you want to get the problem acknowledged by the police, it sounds like a very good way of doing it, as long as the method in which you collect the data doesn't mean it distorts the data, which is what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I agree that another 2 weeks of monitoring is not a big deal, but I'm a bit confused why we've got to make it in such a visible method.
I guess it's just a process, isn't it?
I suppose you want their help and therefore you have to play by.
But then the data are better.
At least with the other data as well.
They have said they'll consider the day we've got as well. It will be supplementary.
It was just confused.
I think it will show lower, when there will be a reduction in
There
speed.
will be.
Andy,
I was at the meeting and obviously followed up as well on that meeting. So a police officer has been identified and volunteered to do the project, so it has moved forward.
That's the evening.
That is the evening session.
Brilliant.
And he lives in the village, so he's got even more incentive to do that. So that was a bit updated on that. I totally agree with you. The reason we stopped doing speed watch is because they made it more and more overt. And agree with you totally, Sarah. What's the point? Because you don't get any representative speeds. The reason they wanted speed watch is because the data loggers we're using, and you're right, we've got 24/7 data at all locations in the village right up to the last week, is incredibly comprehensive. They wanted registration numbers. And this is one of the things that Speedwatch did, and then the intent was the registration numbers of offenders, depending on how fast they were going, would have a police officer turn up at their door and give them a good stern talking to, and also to try and understand if there were repeat offenders doing it. And Speedwatch in the original days did a really good job at that. And because we weren't so overt, we didn't have a big sign up the road saying, round the corner you're going to have a Speedwatch, which is what they have to do now, which is crackers. So we collected lots of data, and we saw over the period of doing it that the repeat offenders reduced almost zero. And we're only there an hour a week, and so the deterrent value was demonstrated that they didn't know when somebody was going to be there, and the fact they'd got a letter through the post, they didn't do it again, so that was good. I agree with you, I'm not quite sure 2 weeks data is 2 weeks of what somebody's standing there 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, or for an hour slot every day. Those bits of data are, I think, of limited value, so I agree with you, I'm not exactly sure what the real value of that would be. They've got plenty of data. The last data log we put up last week showed an average over the whole 7 days of 50% speeding of all of the vehicles over a 7 day period, not just the peak periods. So that's a known problem. So we're waiting to hear back what they're going to do, what they want to do about the speed watch bit, if they've got the equipment to lend us, and then how often they want us to do it, for how long, and what they're going to do with the data. And that information is yet to come. So
I got the impression from reading it, and I mean, one impression was that there is somehow a requirement that you have two weeks. You've got to have a block of 2 weeks of data.
But you've got 2 weeks of data.
Yeah.
That's more from the Mick George cameras, haven't you?
And
there's
no registration data. So if they're different purposes, I think he wanted them for. But the Speedwatch side, as I said, I think it doesn't give you representative data because of the visibility of it. And also you only get a snapshot an hour a day or a week or whatever it is, so that's yet to be defined.
It sounds like we need to do it.
Well,
Yeah.
yes. I mean,
Can they get a speed from a side-on situation? Because I don't mind somebody sitting in one of my bedrooms upstairs, which overlooks the crossroads, and they could actually monitor them going through the crossroads. I got cut up in my car about a week ago, and somebody nearly took me out. I was coming from Gravely Way, and somebody came round the corner, and how the hell he missed me, I do not know. He must have been doing 50 odd mile an hour. But if they can monitor from side on a period of or a section of road, I don't mind somebody helping there. So I don't know whether that's possible.
Well, that's the details they need to tell us.
It's a case of watch your space. We'll wait till we get the response, and then we'll be calling for volunteers to fill in the slots for a 2-week period.
And then see where we... Can I ask something else? Because we've got these speed number camera thing, not cameras, you know, saying you're going too fast.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Susan, I'm the caretaker.
Hello, caretaker. Do they actually belong to the village, or do they belong to Cambridgeshire County Council or Hertfordshire?
We don't own any.
So they don't work properly, do they? You know, when it...
I haven't never...
On the Possum Road, if you're doing 20 miles an hour, it'll fire up saying you're doing 30.
Sometimes it's not.
And sometimes it doesn't work at all. And so who owns those? Do we know?
I think they're Cambridge, yeah.
So can we request that Cambridgeshire County Council
Maintain them.
replace them with new models that work?
Yeah, they're just recalibrating. They've done that before.
Yeah.
But I think maybe they're a little bit too
We'll ask.
old.
I must admit, I got through and got it to trigger on my gator, and I can only do 50 mile an hour. You're right,
And also on this, is there any way, can we put it in so we could ask, can we do a voluntary 20 mile an hour? Are we allowed to put voluntary 20 mile an hour signs along Possum Road? Bearing in mind that Mick George has got them.
Yeah.
Can we ask
We get
it?
the same response that we
What's
always
that?
get, that they're taken down. We can't put anything
No,
on.
no, we're not allowed to.
Oh, okay,
Can
which
we
council?
ask them, can we have voluntary 20 miles an hour along?
Like a triangle with the side.
Yes, on a voluntary basis. I've seen loads of villages have these. And it would maybe stop people overtaking you on Possum Road if you are doing 20 miles an hour. I don't know, but I have seen loads of villages with these.
Okay. Well, Joe will make inquiries.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks. Okay. Right, that's good. I think that's knocked that one around. 3.3 report from yours truly after speaking on behalf of PC at the
Oh,
moment.
yes.
Examination. It's okay, actually.
No documentation, is there?
No, it was just a hearing. So the inspector sat there and absorbed all sorts of information, asked questions, gave HTC planners lots of things to go and respond to. Basically, it was land agents sitting around wanting their piece of land included. The good news as far as Hilton was concerned, there were no land agents requesting or encouraging Huntingdon to include those pieces of land in the plan. So there's nobody speaking on behalf of increasing the land supply for the plan, which was good, I thought. They still see us as a small development, small settlement, no development, and they see that there's about 70 small settlements throughout the area, and they see that as producing about 80 houses per year. So the general policy is that small settlements will not provide the bulk of housing. It's just odd infills here and there. The terminology has been reduced a bit, but the general statement is that it's still just there for odd fillings. There's still hearings going on in September. One of the things that came out was that HTC had been using old information when this call for land and the various criteria by which you were judged. You needed 4 of the 5, and we only had 3 of the 5, and therefore it was questioned why we were included at all. They were using old information; they hadn't actually updated their information, and so the inspector suggested that it would be a good idea if HTC actually went round and checked what was available. So I think it might be a good idea if Joe sent a quick note into the inspector, just confirming that we've only got 3 of the 5. I think that's in the bus route. And we're losing a bus route, so that you can throw in additional bits that weaken the infrastructure. But the bus wasn't actually mentioned, the bus route wasn't actually mentioned, but it wasn't
one of the documents.
Right.
Yeah, it was in one of our responses, whether it was the first one or the second one. I think it was the second one.
Right.
Whether it was referred to as a bus route.
Yeah. Oh, yes, it did say heading. Yeah, sorry, heading. Yes.
Probably did, but we don't know.
Yes.
And wasn't there something about employment, e.g.
Yeah,
Papworth
well, yes.
Hospital that's closing now?
So it wouldn't do us a bad thing to just to send it in inspector, just to confirm what our facilities are. Okay, that's that. So that was an all-day thing. 3.4 is fireworks. Update on purchase of fireworks. Have we had any further response?
No, I was hoping to
okay.
update everybody, but unfortunately I've sent a couple of I sent an email back in June when we talked about purchasing them, and that was received, welcomed, and I had a message back to say that they would look into getting them early to get the discount, but I've made contact twice recently and I've not had any response.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I did try another somebody else on the fireworks committee who then prompted him to resign from the fireworks committee because he's moved out of the village, so I didn't get very far with that
Should
either.
that fall now?
So I don't know.
Okay. So we do perhaps need to just find out what's happening there.
Yeah. I'm hoping that they've been bought and everything.
Yes,
So,
because we've actually only got one more meeting presumably
yeah.
before this is before the November meeting will be after, won't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So we need to keep an eye on that one. And we'll send around the same spreadsheet and list at some point as to duties and things, and we'll generally keep the format as before. I think that worked okay. And there's a question about whether we want to get involved in changing the prices. I believe this year Hemmingford won't be having their fireworks, so we may get more people. Whether that's changed, but last year they claimed it was their last year because they were losing permission to use their field. So there's a chance we may have more people here. But so it's £2.50 and £1 last year. And don't forget we are subsidised. Exactly, we are subsidised by the donation.
Are we doing road closures, and have we done?
We never have for that evening, no.
I was just thinking if there's more people turning up, but I
No.
don't know if it's necessary or not. But you could park people. If we had more people, then you could park them in the road if the road was closed. Save some of the green.
I think road closures at night are a bit dodgy, aren't they?
Are they? I don't know.
A bit more difficult, I would have thought.
You get a lot of cars on frozen road. There's a problem.
Yeah, you can never get them off again,
Yes.
would you?
It never has been a problem, but
We can monitor it, can't we?
Yeah.
See what happens.
yeah. Yes, because this is maybe the first year without Hemmingford, and then we'll have to see if it does have a knock-on effect. So unless anyone wants to say anything on fireworks, that can move on. Okay. Right, Anne, update following meeting with A14CC and W. You've been busy over summer, haven't you?
has been busy, hasn't she?
No,
Well, under
do inform us.
Ian.
Oh, sorry.
Well, we did.
Well, Ian isn't here. Well done.
It was, we had a I think it was a very helpful meeting with the 14 legacy team chap, Gerald Smith and Mike Davis from the County Council. This was following confirmation of where they put the non-motorised user pathways. So from our point of view, on the wrong side of the P1040 and the fence times. They were sympathetic to that, and at that point we were just putting in our expression of interest for funding for the feasibility study. That went ahead, which is what prompted the community fund application. I have to say I didn't realise when we did the first one that we would have to do another one in order to just get the feasibility study. Yes. Anyway, what was sent just today, and apologies for it being late, but it took me a long time, is I kind of downloaded all the questions in that, because it's all online, to find application, and I'm suggesting for some of them what the answers might be.
Okay, yeah.
And what I've done to a large extent where there's a lot of text is use the information that we used in the expression of interest, so if that ticked the box hopefully. But of course they ask a lot more information, and to be honest, I don't know what the answers are.
I mean, presumably, people have normally got a precise project to build in mind. The fact that this is all just for feasibility studies, isn't it?
Well, Mike Davis has been very helpful. He's come back and said, okay, they'll be doing the feasibility study. It'll probably cost about 10k. It'll take 3 months, but they can't give us a start date as soon as we can get back to it. So my sense is just to put that in there to say, you know, that'll be at the request.
They seem very like this was quite normal to get funded to a feasibility study.
Yes.
Because,
Yes.
you know, to a comment,
Yeah.
it's a bit unusual. No, they seem like this is pretty standard.
Yes.
You get this you get this funding to do a feasibility study.
Yeah, I mean, when I say it's unusual, it's just it's not. It's
So basically, it's someone either from the council or from a third party company to come walk the roads, see what would be required to put a proper suitable engineer in, look at the various routes and come up with a proposal.
So they look at all the different options.
Yeah, and we'll come up with a proposal on the costings to say, you know, this is the problem we're trying to fix. These are the options available to you. This is what we think is feasible or not.
And the path is so lovely, isn't it? All the way down, it goes all the way to the...
All the way till it stops.
It does stop in the right place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's next to a blind corner.
Well, yeah, that's unfortunate that bit.
Yeah.
But this end, it actually more or less connects with the community way.
Well, that was the rationale. I mean, we asked them to explain why, because it was clearly the county council that determined which side these things went. And they brightly came back with, oh, well, it was to link up with Brook Way, is it, and Weir Way, and you get a nice circular route. Okay, how's that going to help me get to school, get to work, get anywhere?
I can't see why the other end.
It
The
is
other end doesn't go anywhere, does it?
There is
Well, no,
But
well,
there is a
there
path,
is
the other side
actually.
the other side of the road.
Okay.
So you have to cross that, which is the sticking point.
Well, that was one of the other things we made a great deal of, was that our ideal would be to not have to cross the road anywhere. Because crossing the Potton Road in particular is quite a thought. But they've fessed up that that isn't an option.
No, we are. Yeah, we are.
Traffic lights.
Yeah.
Well, we're used to them, aren't we? We're used to them.
They said, we spoke about that, they said you'd never get it.
No.
They said you'd never, on that road, you'd never get it.
Well, I think the added complication is that if it's a 60-mile-an-hour road that the pathway is on, they have to make it 2 metres wide. So you get the metre-wide pathway, but there has to be another verge, another metre. And so getting the land to do that, not challenging.
I think the best option actually was probably to look at going like Fensampton Road and changing the speed limit.
Yes.
Reduce the speed limit all the way to like 30 or 40.
Yeah.
Well, can we change the Potton Road to 40?
Well, that's, no.
Basically,
It's a short answer.
Did
So-
you ask?
Oh,
So-
yes.
Or is it just no?
But they said that it's just not.
So- They were very upbeat about putting his proposal in. Or
Yeah,
Yes,
it's very
very
positive. I think the
encouraging.
fact that Mike was there, it would be his team that potentially did
Okay.
this study,
Yes,
was really helpful because they were working together on kind of coming up with solutions.
yes.
And to be, I mean, this may be my reading and it may not be right, Rob, I'll be interested in yours, but I just felt that they were actually quite sympathetic to where it ended up.
Yes.
It's very diplomatic, but I think his words were he can understand why we think the path is on the wrong side.
It's not, but he understands how we think.
But the one of the decisions we need to make like now is, do we go through this and agree all the bits that need to go in there? Because there's a 7th of September deadline.
Yeah.
I mean, it's every so many months.
Yes, it's 3 months, isn't it?
So
you miss
if we
this,
don't get the 7th of
it's Christmas.
December application, then
Yeah.
it's somehow around.
I mean, presumably there's no risk to the council, is it? It's not match funded.
Well, the only thing they do say, and they were very clear on this, it's looked upon very favourably
Yeah.
if you do contribute something towards it. And I think he said at the time, you know, even £500 would be a
That's
serious
right.
thing, although this suggests it's more than that. But I
10 to
think
20%.
Yeah, but I think what they found is that local communities are finding that difficult. So he said, yeah, even 500 quid it's a tick box exercise, and they're basically saying if there's any pound note sign with something next to it, that will really help the application.
Is there anything in that form that's potentially contentious, or can we just fill that in?
Presumably any contentious bit is the money.
There's a lot of technical stuff, like how many staff are in the Parish Council and how many committee members, blah de blah. Well, the thing I kind of got stumped on, I would certainly need help with not having been here that long, is please tell us about the impact of your organisation's previous work. I mean, I've defined the organisation as Hilton Parish Council. So what can we cite that we can say, hey, we've done a brilliant job here, so we would make this happen? I don't know.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the Parish Council is well known, isn't it? You've got to presumably bear in mind that all sorts of charities and organisations who have been set up perhaps just for these funds
Oh, indeed, may have
no histories. I mean,
but nevertheless, we have to put something in there.
Indeed, but we're...
Up to 100 words, in fact.
Well, yes, but
so what do I put in
yes,
there?
but
I think it's very that
we're elected and we're probably...
support the village,
Yeah,
especially the community.
sure we can find some words for that, yes.
And any additional information we want? But most of the rest I've had a go at. But I'm very happy to have.
I think you've done a very good job with it.
And all that kind of stuff. And technical things like who do I say is the contact person? Is it you?
Or it could be.
Okay. So I've, as you suggested, you're the clerk and the treasurer now. Okay. But yeah, project name. Well, I think most of it I've covered off, and as you were asking, Kieran, there's nothing kind of contentious. It's just trying to do the best we can to best ensure we get somewhere. But there is the point, as Rob said, about agreeing, can we throw some money in the pot? But there's no point in putting in the application, frankly, unless we can put some funds against it.
So we can agree to that.
So it's rather like having an excess on your insurance, is it? How much are you going to pay up front?
Yeah.
I mean, it's slightly awkward because I suppose it wasn't on the agenda, but I suppose we can just have to...
Well, it's in the form.
Yes, I know, but I was just thinking on the agenda it might have said there's a request to spend monies, but I mean, presumably we can agree on a figure, and if there is a problem, we should have to back out at the end of it. Because we can't raise the £500 or whatever we agree. But do you think the 500 would be sufficient? Or do you think
In the meeting, that thing will, as long as we all seem to put something towards it, it's £500.
Yes.
I mean, the whole finance area is the area where we're weakest, because it's saying things like how much has been raised so far.
Okay. Yes.
And it does say 10 to 20% of funding is required from other sources. So
That said, I mean, this is all,
final
it's just numbers and you can so you are. So if you think back to the part that was put in near the village, who paid for that?
The
part that was from the...
Oh yes.
Who funded that?
S106. Scott's present paid for that.
So we can say that we've used village funds to create parks. So actually, historically, we have spent money on parks, leaving village.
Yes.
So there is previous work, and we're doing work within the village on parks. So now, so we can include those who said we're doing work within the village, and some historically we've done externally to the sum of roughly this amount. So I think we can talk about what we've done on parks.
Well, any detail you can throw at me would be helpful.
Well, that's Kieran's got the work that's start shortly on the parks in the village, and we did that a few years ago, when that was, and then I don't know who had the costing for section 106 money that was used to make the park legal village in the east side.
That was some time ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ian might say no, didn't to say you're using that money without
it's
my
my
cost. I think they're just in principle.
Yes.
I think for those couple of
I mean, presumably the seal money could be used, couldn't it? I'm sure we could find the money from somewhere, provided we agreed to spend it.
Okay. I suppose what my sense is that anything like that you can tell me about or give me, then I'll stuff it in there. The other area that I'm kind of wobbly about is we've done nothing with landowners. Ian's going to go and speak to somebody.
The guy who owns the,
but that's, we ought to have something in here that says this is how we are going to proceed. They're asking for, what you're going to do next.
But isn't this all, at the moment, just a feasibility? If they say it's not feasible and it's going to cost too much, regardless of who owns the land.
But it may be that even just getting access to the feasibility study, people get upset. I know.
They're only walking
I'm just
small
trying to
through it.
cover up all the
Yes.
angles and then maybe over egging
Yes.
it.
But as yes.
I don't want it to fail.
No, no. But I mean, do we send this back to one of the gentlemen who you've spoken to already?
I could do, and I could send it to both Gerald
Yes.
and
I
Mike.
think that
and
might be a
say,
way of
This is
critiquing our sponsor
what it's
response.
looking like. What do you
Mm.
think?
Yes.
I think that's a good
I don't
idea.
have much time. Not a lot, and Thursday.
Yes. But maybe he could advise us on certain things that we can't. He may say, I mean, to my mind,
Yes,
it's a
yeah.
feasibility. So I would have thought that's a bit easier than to make it so physical. And that he could hopefully guide us where we weaken things, where we should be providing more. At the moment, I would suggest, I mean, do you think we could vote on a £500?
I think we could.
Why don't we?
I think a bit more than that might be a bit tricky, but we're only,
Because
we're not actually
you've
spending
had
it.
that guidance, haven't you? So
I think we're saying that if it comes to something, then we will.
So we don't have to send that with the application.
No,
No.
no, no. It's if you're successful, you have to be basically.
Yeah, that's right.
So can I then propose that we put down that we would be willing to put in a £500 subsidy or
Contribution.
So I propose that. Contribution.
Yes, please.
Here is seconding it. All those in favour?
Yeah.
So everybody?
well
That's good.
done.
So Anne, are you happy to
Very much.
continue with
Yes,
this?
Yes, I will.
Sending it out to us if you need it, or
Yeah. Well, you will have had a copy today.
We
but
have,
when you haven't
yes.
got time.
yes?
But I'll send it to Gerard and Mike and say, where do we need to do more, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
And see what they say. If, I mean, they're not quick to come back.
You might just have to take a
I was
deep
going to say,
breath
should we
and
just submit, even if
press-
they
oh,
don't
yes.
press
Oh, yes,
the
we have,
button
yes,
on the 7th anyway,
Yeah.
don't we?
Yes.
Well,
I think
a good
that's the
point.
other thing. Should we agree that we are going to submit it?
Right, right, yes.
By
yeah,
the seventh.
So I
Yeah.
didn't, yes. I mean, do we need to vote on that? I don't think we do, because there's no...
I don't know.
I think we voted on the money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think by doing that, we effectively said...
Let's go
yes,
for it.
please.
okay.
I think it's a bit of a long shot, because if they're going to put a surface on that road all the way through, the footpath all the way through, I think that's going to be quite a bill, but yeah, no.
Well, the latest I can actually send it, unless somebody else wants to do it, is the morning of the 6th.
Okay. Well, can I...
Thank you. That's all for all.
If you aim for that, then we've got some backup
Yeah.
if it goes wrong. Good.
Okay, thank you,
Is
team.
that okay?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. And are they going to look at other routes as well? Because obviously you've got the third
Yeah,
route.
well,
They're
we
gonna-
went through with them kind of our preferences and so
Yeah.
on, and actually the legacy guy, Gerard, he was really helpful because we'd already said to him, why don't we run it along the Fortin Road and go on the south side of the new
Yes.
A14 and
Yes.
So he came back and said, well, might be an issue because you can't go under
That's true. Yes.
the two roads.
Yes.
So you'd have to get up and
On-
cross them anyway. But I said, well, okay, we're going to have to cross the roads, whichever option by the look
I
of
know
it.
which one I prefer to cross, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I think what we said at the time was that, okay, that might be a preference, but the whole idea of the feasibility study
Yes.
is to say, well, what's workable?
What we didn't do is close them off and say, this is what we think.
No.
Yes.
Let's
Yes.
give them the problem,
Yes.
let's not
We're here, we want to go
Because
there.
there's another option to go further along Potton Road and go across by the lakes and,
Yes. Yeah.
upgrade that footpath,
Yeah, they suggested you could carry on the path where it stops,
Yes,
all the way up
cross
to
over.
the old A14,
right.
across there next to the roundabout, which is obviously where cars are in theory in much slower, you could do something more.
And we know the Lakes Business
Doesn't
Park,
take it
people
away.
are having to chip in.
It
It's
is.
going to be involved.
We might,
You've still got the
open a
bridge
different door.
and, yeah, but it's getting further along, it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
Okay. Right. 4.2. This was the easement. You've seen the bit, the paragraph in the supporting documents for the benefit of parishioners. You will recall that we had a discussion as to who was going to pay for the valuation. It has been agreed now that the applicant will be paying for that. So the £800 bill was agreed to be spent.
Yeah.
So we called in the valuer. I met him on site on the 14th of August. And basically, the value report is still awaited. Now, 14th of August is 3 weeks ago, so I think it's perfectly in order for us to... the only thing I can really say is that we should really be chasing him. He was a nice gentleman, but he was a bit like the inspector that we met at Huntingdon. They absorbed. There was, you know, they don't...
away.
No, exactly. So he had all... But to be fair, he did have all the paperwork, all the bits and pieces. The land was marked out. He knew exactly where he was. It would have been awkward if he phoned up because he couldn't find where he was. So I actually met him on site, so he knew exactly where it was. So we're waiting the valuation.
So are you saying you shouldn't be using the gateway?
That's the Parish Council's response, yes.
Well, what are you going to do about it?
Exactly. Well, that's not on the agenda for that part.
Well, it'll be too late for next meeting.
No. It's been violated on many occasions.
Well, that doesn't matter. You know, he's taking the... He's playing you like a fiddle.
Mm-hmm. Well, the valuation should be here shortly, so that will be hopefully...
Difficult to move without that.
Yes, this will be on the next agenda, money-wise. Okay. Right, next item on the agenda. Nipping back to 4.3. Green open spaces, including update on paths, start dates, cutting, cricket pitch, emergency, something or other. Kieran, can I pass this on to you? Emergency tree work.
Okay. Not in that order, but quite a bit to go through actually. Probably remember that the survey took place a few weeks ago, tree survey. We've now got, the survey comes back in the form of a quotation from Planning who helps us do the survey. Very extensive, as always. So we'll add this into our list of tree work that's ongoing. The open spaces group will meet in the next couple of weeks. We'll get reciprocal quotes from the other tree surgeon we use and bring it all together in the autumn for the council to peruse and get some decisions over. There is still quite a bit of volunteer tree work which we didn't get completed last spring, so that's going to carry on in October. So it'd be nice to get one of this finished before we start the next. That's tree work. We had a bit of sad news about Rodney Markham. I don't know if you know. Sorry. He mows the cricket pitch, has done for many years. He sadly passed away this summer. Don't know anything more than that, other than he'll be well for a while. But anyway, so we've, as an interim measure, I've asked John to step in and continue the mowing on a similar sort of regime that Rodney did, although it was not really very specific. It was just done as needed, and on the same terms. So whatever Rodney charged to do it, John will do it. Last year he mowed it about 19 times.
Yeah.
So I reckon we've got about 6 to 8 left to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's done this year. I've not looked.
But anyway, we'll just carry on as we are for the moment. We'll review it when the Open Spaces group meet and come back to the council with a proposal of what we do. Whether we just roll it through to April when the new contract comes in play, or whether we look for something else. But we'll come back to council with a proposal. There's been some greenery branches, whatever, left on the wilderness. I've got a little bit of a bonfire going there.
There will be others.
Had a request from somebody who would like it to be burnt, which is fine because we don't want it to become an attraction as we get closer to fire at night and have premature donations. So we'll get on and burn what's there now.
Need any more to put on it?
No.
That's exactly what the issue I'm talking about.
That's all there is on that. Paths, we have a start date, 8th of October, around about. Craig's got problems with his workmate, and that's why it has been a bit vague, and is starting later than he was hoping to. But without getting into a lot of details, he's not very well and caused him a few problems. So anyway, we're looking around about the 8th of October to start.
We need to put something in the spectrum we talked about at the last meeting.
Yeah, well, that's why I've been speaking to Kira to try to get an idea of if somebody out there just freaks me out a bit.
Yeah, I just suddenly saw that.
Yeah, so obviously we didn't have the start date until now, so once it gets a bit closer and we know for definite it's going to start.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we can put an
We
approximate.
must say just in October sometimes.
Yeah.
We're going to miss it, aren't we? Because when's the
Early
deadline?
mid-October, something
Yeah,
along those
okay.
lines.
Yeah. Well, yes, you can go in the report, can't you?
Last,
Because you,
um,
yeah.
do we want to put it in the spectrum or just?
Well, we'll put it in within the parish notes. The,
Yeah,
the,
yeah, okay.
So
the meeting notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Might we put some notices up on the notices?
Is there a particular reason why, or just for information?
Sorry.
Oh, just we
About-
talked about it at the
about
last
paths.
meeting because
Yes.
Yeah.
people won't be able to use the pass and when it's been done, so I'm assuming.
Okay.
There'll be a fair bit of material hanging around as well in parts.
Okay. So is the point to just sort of be careful,
Yeah.
beware?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not
Yeah,
very
it'd be
far.
helpful.
Yes. Don't trip. Okay. Good.
The last thing is the pavilion. It's not really part of the green topics normally, but just to let you know, the plan application is now in. If you want to view the drawings, they're on the website under notices. And the heritage statement and the design access statement, it's all there.
Excellent. Good.
Well done.
Thank you.
Benches,
Should we put
Kieran.
that in spectrum?
Sorry?
Benches.
I haven't actually got anything sound benches, I don't know.
4.3.
Add to that.
They do need to be put out, so we need to sort that out, because one's been languishing in the pavilion, and one's growing roots at my house. So they do need to be. I think should you and I have a chat?
We'll have
Actually, Rob could be involved, wouldn't he? I'm thinking engineering-wise.
Really?
Well, what the best method of installing them?
Okay.
Yeah, I think we think that's.
Brackets.
Yeah,
Is the one
Yeah,
that went from
exactly.
there
Sorry?
out, it was the one that disappeared out here or got damaged again out here? Was it damaged or was it just uprooted?
It was uprooted, but in so doing, the spike, the metal spikes that we sat on, and so they were bent round. But I just think we could perhaps come up with a spec, and then whether the volunteers do it or whether we hand it out to somebody to do.
Yeah.
We have to have an engineering club.
Okay. Shall we do that when we meet at the open spaces meeting? I know
Yes.
either of you are on that, but we could.
You can be
Just
invited.
gonna
maybe.
guess.
Do you have any meetings?
Yes.
Do you actually have any meetings?
It's just a.
Yep. Okay, yeah, that'll be fine. Thank you.
Sorry, can I say one thing? Going back, because we started this afternoon about benches. Should we just put in spectrum the fact that the planning application has gone into the pavilion?
Yeah.
Just because
Yeah, it's an old one. It's,
it's been,
It's tied
it would be quite a nice thing for,
Yes.
is that okay?
yeah, so we generally sort of try and pick out the salient points from these meetings just to make it interesting reading.
Well, it's just a lot of people have asked about the pavilion.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's a good idea. I mean, the application captures pretty much what we've got back when we did the
Yeah.
consultation.
Yeah,
Captures what's been
Yeah.
discussed at the work group.
yeah.
Some of it will not be what everybody was expecting, never is.
But they can always come to a meeting.
But before it goes much further than that.
Yeah.
Good.
Good. Okay, thank you. Anne, you're back on stage. Community bus service, following your meeting you had and the survey.
Very interesting. A meeting in St Ives with a little bunch of us from different parishes and town and St Ives town about the awful situation with buses. And where we ended up, it was quite a lively meeting, was why don't we sort of start from a future perspective and work backwards. So instead of lamenting what we haven't got, is to ask people through this free questionnaire that's been sent out, or abbreviation on that, a fairly simple generic questionnaire that would help build a picture of if you had to rely on buses and didn't have a car, etc., which routes, which times of day, etc., would suit. And the idea is to give that the results, not just to each other, but to the combined authority, because they have taken responsibility for public transport. So, not so much, I mean, the county council is still involved, but they've actually sucked it right up to the top, because the mayor, whatever his name, is saying that this is a big deal and I will fix it.
Really?
So we thought we'd inform him.
Oh.
So all I need from you folks is the okay. It needs some tweaking, but
Yes.
if we're happy that we proceed with this as a survey that we can apply across all the villages, what it will entail from us is that we distribute it, although the clerk at Dives Council is saying that she'll create an online survey monkey and hope most people will use that. But obviously we may need to give people paper copies if they need them, or they can ask for them. But we need to at least do a leaflet or something to tell people about it.
So,
Which I'm happy to do.
yeah, there's a couple of things, because you had asked for a meeting with Cambridgeshire County Council, didn't you? Has that happened?
No, no.
Or
Well,
is it going to happen after this survey, when you got information? Right, okay.
Various people around that table had met with all sorts, bus companies, county council, district council, whatever. And the view was we were going around a bit in a circle, and we were lamenting that there wasn't a great deal, it didn't seem to be a lot happening.
Yeah.
So we thought, well, maybe if we push it from the point of view of providing information, saying, well, people in this sort of area, in this part of Cambridgeshire, would really benefit from this kind of public transport provision, then that might give us a sort of step forward. I mean, we talked about all sorts of other options, but at least this was something concrete to get stuck into.
The other thing that springs to mind is this will be the second survey that we've sent out to our parishioners. I'm just wondering whether we should have a cover note as to what the first one was.
Well, this one,
And then this was
yeah.
I mean,
it
this
makes sense anyway.
Yes, this presumably is going to be the same for all the 8 areas.
That's the idea.
So we can't tweak it, it has to be,
No.
well, we can tweak it, but it'll be tweaked for everybody.
Yes, the idea was that you can put on your local livery, you know, you can decorate it any way you like, but
Yes,
the fundamental piece is going to be the
Yep.
same.
yes, okay.
So really a covering note that goes with it,
Yes.
explaining
Yeah.
it is a good idea. It
I would
doesn't have
think
to be
so.
an
Yeah,
essay,
that's
just
It's quite different to the last survey, isn't it? It's about
It is.
what you, if you didn't have a car at all, what you would use and what you would need, which is...
And it's
and I think the fact that this
district.
is of the whole district is,
Yes. Yes, this is a district-wide one rather than
yes,
just any
and
organised
it's the
one.
same one for the whole district.
Yes.
Okay. Well, what I can do is draft one,
Mhm.
but also bounce it around that little community to see if anybody else has got one to write, or whether anybody else has already done one.
Mhm.
And then,
Yes.
well, the idea that you'll note on the top of this, it's a deadline Wednesday, 31st of October.
Yep.
So the idea is that we get it out by the end of September and get
Okay.
responses by 31st of October.
So,
Can we proceed on that basis?
Good question.
And we'll promise to do a covering note.
comments from the table? Well, it's not particularly...
I don't see a problem with that.
I don't think it's asking too many personal questions.
No.
So what's the method of distributing the survey?
I'll need to get the Dives woman whose name's completely not my head to just tell me how she's setting it up and how people will be able to access it.
So we basically leaflet everyone with the web address.
With the information, yes, and then they either go on to SurveyMonkey or they say, can you get me everything?
Can we perhaps put on our little note at the front saying either go onto the website or Sunny or the pub has got some? If we can obviously ask Sunny and or the pub. And then we could just print out a dozen and leave them there, and if they run out, we could get more. And then that means that you're not being phoned up.
Yeah, we've done that before, he's been really helpful.
Very good.
So I don't know the detail on it.
Yeah.
I'll do these.
That's right, lots of lodgings.
Excellent. So, are we generally happy? Any reservations?
No, none at all.
Okay, so I propose then that we encourage Anne to carry on with this survey,
I'll second that.
requesting help as she needs it. And we do leaflet drops and we need to be on board.
We agreed to do it, I'll do a covering note, draft a leaflet,
Yes.
and send it round, so we can all volunteer to
Yeah.
and I'll ask someone to put copies.
And in terms of printing it off, is that a problem? How are we going to do that?
Not if we take the point that Sarah was making, that if we expect most people to use survey
Okay. Then
we'll just do a small number
yes.
and say if you need more, either download it.
Yes.
And what about the leaflets? Each person that does their sort of 200 houses, they're just going to print off the 200 leaflets.
I can
Well,
print them off, I mean, it's not the,
It's probably easy to do A5, aren't they?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's nice as well.
Definitely.
Do 2 or 3 per A4 page is how I would do it.
Yes.
So are you going to print them? Sharon?
I'm happy to print.
Thank you.
That's your stuff.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Okay. Did I get a second for proposing?
I did.
Sarah second.
Okay. All those in favour?
Yeah.
The camera survey? Great. Thank you. So we know what's going on. Thank you. Right. The easements, green, information only. Ah, yes. This was something that came about from Laura.
I got
Got the
mine
cat
before.
at the beginning of August. But I didn't quite. Was it a reservoir? I mean, basically, it involved a lot of spoil removal, didn't it?
Andy probably knows all the because he attended the meeting. I was unable to attend.
I can give you an update on what the background is. There's it's just near Haddenham, planning permission to put in to dig a very large reservoir because of the problems with irrigation of the potato crops around there. But I mean, it's huge potentially, and by the looks of the numbers they're talking about, it's 90 lorry trips a day at least, full-size aggregate lorries. The point for ourselves here is that there will be on-site processing. So there was this question of whether lorries were going to go, were they going to go to Mick George's compound in St Ives and then be processed. But the danger is that they're going to do the processing on site, and therefore the lorries will probably leave from that site and go directly to wherever the customer is. As we know, there's a huge amount of buildings south of St Ives, so there'll be a significant number more aggregate lorries coming through Hilton potentially because of that, and other villages. But we know that a lot of them are coming south. So that's sort of the background, and there was a lot of villages around there wanted to put in an objection to that, or at least a restriction to how many loads, how much aggregate would be taken out, how long it would take, they would be doing it for.
Yeah, it was something like 17 years.
Yeah, much more than is needed to dig a reservoir. In other words, some other hidden agenda there.
So we put a response in, which kind of, I don't know if you've seen the response, but it was basically following on the lines of conversations that we've had within the Parish Council. So I didn't think it was too controversial. I didn't think we needed to call a meeting because it was only continuing what we'd already discussed about traffic through the village. We didn't have, by the time we, yeah.
My own response, which I did online, required more
Well, exactly.
energetic.
As an individual, you can say an awful lot more because you don't need permission or agreement from your colleagues.
Sure. But
So
I was
what-
slightly surprised that we'd taken such a downbeat view of it.
Well, we had to be a bit.
Because we weren't able to discuss it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a bit.
So we just said that we would oppose any application that had the potential to increase the already high level of heavy commercial traffic through the village, mindful that the route uses a minor road of B classification. Therefore, we expect that if this application is approved, the conditions should be applied that resultant traffic movements are restricted to the major routes classified A. Therefore, the economic viability of the application can be considered on that basis and from the outset. Previously, when we've been discussing about lorry bans, it's always uneconomic because it's cheaper to come through. Well, if it started from the outset, then you could decide whether it's economic to dig it out or not. So that was what we responded with. That's just for information. Okay. Right. Moving on to information only requests. So item 5.1. Request from a parishioner to set up a Hilton Angling Club and look at the welfare of the village ponds. Now this has all come about, it started off with the lack of rain. The ponds have dried up and the ditches have dried up. And then we had some rain, which improved things for a short while. And then it's gone bad again. Have you seen Breeze Ditch recently? Is it still bad?
It's quite low.
I saw it about a week ago. The general concern is that maybe the reservoir that is being filled constantly on the A14 is actually artificially lowering the groundwater. EA have been approached. Something about they couldn't help us because it was fishing for residents only, which was only a sign that we put up to try and deter others from doing it.
I might be able to help on that one.
Yeah.
Because there's a sign in Reeves Ditch, it indicates that somebody owns the ditch.
Oh, okay. Right.
So whoever owns the ditch has to approach the Environment Agency.
Yes. Fine. Have we ever? I mean, when it started getting low, we have had some communication because we had the communication about aeration.
Yes, I did speak to the EA, who unfortunately, because obviously everywhere was suffering, they just basically didn't have the resources to send anybody out. And I did speak to a company about aeration. They needed details of the size of the pond and all the rest of it. I sent them photographs and stuff, but they never came back to me. But since then, we've been told that actually that would cause more damage anyway, because the pond's so low, the ditch is so low.
It ideally could be doing with desilting, because when the fish are disturbing the water now, there's only about 10 inches of water left in the pond. When they disturb the sediment, it's releasing anaerobic bacteria, which is displacing the oxygen in the water.
Not they're passing in, so you can literally see the top.
Oh, you said that's got you.
And there's a big van coming in the village with 3 occupants that come in and fish it regularly. They were there on Sunday morning.
Yeah, Sunday afternoon. Sunday afternoon as well, were they?
Yeah, well, I think they were all day, about
Well, advised if
5 or 6 hours.
If we could get water into it, we'd have to sprinkle it from the top.
Yes.
But where we get that water from?
It would have to be sprayed in like rain, otherwise it just kill the fish with disturb.
There's one place, have a word, I don't know if Norma Furnace is on a meter.
But it's the level's affected by groundwater. So if we put water in, it's just going to go away.
Yeah, but that would come out the mains then, wouldn't it?
That's no good.
You're talking about...
No, I'm talking about putting a hose pipe from Norma Furnace's tap into Reeves Ditch and just let it run continually. If she's not on a meter, it doesn't matter, does it? Because there's no hose pipe ban.
I think it's very responsible. And what I've got a well, I can see...
Save the fish.
My well's down as well.
We're down, but we're not massively down on last year. It's probably about a foot lower than we were this time last year.
I'm about 2 foot in. And very recently.
Yes,
because it's been high most of the summer, where it usually is. And it's only been over the last few weeks, I've suddenly noticed it's dropped by 2 feet. I mean, very recently.
I mean, I would say there's limited amount we can do whilst it's so low.
Yeah.
And we're coming to the end of the summer, it will rain. The groundwater will come up at some point. And that's probably when we should put some action in to start getting silt out, so at least the fish have got some more volume. You sound like you're quite an expert at this. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It's dropped 10 inches in the last week. Even though we had the rain, it's dropped 10 inches.
There does seem to be a lag between the weather and what's happening with it.
With the geology being such as silt and gravel, they've gone incredibly deep to draw the water for the A14, and it's just, they said they've stopped pumping, but it's still leaching through the soil, still leaching through, so that's as for the ponds suffering.
Have we had a response from
And
the
the,
EA?
the brook's completely dry and it's been dry for
Yeah.
Yeah, the Brooks, right, but have we had a response from A14? Because the emails imply that they were going to contact A14.
I think initially they said that, like you say, that they've stopped pumping, but they haven't had
they
any.
might have pumped out so much that the water tables can
Balance.
be completely altered. They were very, very deep on the far side of the A4, the new A14.
Right.
Do we have a slight concern as a lot of us are on clay?
Yes, quite.
We could have some cracking with it. If it is this and not just the summer.
Well, maybe we should be pursuing A14 stroke EA to confirm if they have been doing that.
Should we ask parishioners to...
If they've stopped, then whatever damage they've done will eventually get rebalanced again, as long as they're
If
not
they've
continuing to
stopped.
do it.
Yes. But it'd be good to pursue them.
Could
just
we
say,
maybe have a letter from them confirming the fact that they have actually stopped?
They were spraying the motorway, weren't they? Where they were actually running up and down to stop the dust. They were actually spraying that, or out of the back of a lorry or whatever, continually.
It's a temporary thing, because to your point, the water table will, if you fill the pond, it will just disappear again out of the water table. But if they've got water in the reservoir and they've got bowsers that can transport it, which they have, because that's what they're using is down the road, could they come and dump some in the pond to get them back up if it's going to get too low for the fish? But I don't know if you can do that in a sensitive way without just causing more damage, to be honest.
From what, picking up on the point you just mentioned, it has to go in like rainfall.
Yeah.
Those machines are designed to do that, aren't they?
Yeah, that's what the Environment Agency
It's designed just to damp the ground, so literally go along,
Spray.
Okay.
spread it, but
The fire brigade may be able to help.
okay.
Do you have connections in the fire brigade then?
No, I wish I did. They'd have been round there already.
Which then brings us on to the request for the Hilton Angling Club.
sorry, just before that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
This is
What are...
So
what are-
I'll-
Yeah, can we contact...
So I'll contact the
Yeah.
A14 to confirm that they've stopped pumping water and ask whether or not they can come and
Yeah.
put some water.
But it's the comment that the EA won't talk to people because it's got a sign, and you
Yeah.
have spoken. It was worth going back to them and asking the question, what do we need to do? We're concerned about the problem that seems to be dropping.
Well, I think that's covered.
We own
We own the pond, don't we?
the land on which the pond sits, but the water is owned and responsible of the Environment Agency.
Yeah.
So, and the contents of that water, so it is their responsibility.
So perhaps that's what I mean. If we email them directly and say we're concerned about their fish and their water in our
On our land.
Well,
I
Ian,
have already done that though. That's
But
what
I
did
guess
initially.
that's when it was really dry. It's not so dry now,
Yeah.
but we're still having the problem.
They
So it
are
might be worth
still, they
saying,
are still aware, and the gentleman that emailed me about the starting up the possibility of starting up the angling club, he's been in contact with them as well, and they've actually been out and looked at
okay.
the pond, so in the last week.
and they're saying it just won't help.
Well, I think from what Paul, isn't it, has said that I think because of the ownership issue that well, I think that's stopping them doing anything, but then when I spoke to them earlier in the year they couldn't do anything anyway, so I'm not really
So who owns
sure.
it? We own it, so we
We
can
own
ask them to do something.
We have a
Yeah.
So it's our responsibility to keep it clean. Is that right?
to maintain banks.
And the silt level? Or reduce the silt level?
The silt is ours, yeah.
Yes, okay. So only the water's theirs. The water and the fish are theirs,
That's right.
but the stilt's ours.
That's right.
So they should be concerned if
But-
people are
but-
stealing their water.
Yes.
But there's also the issue of the fish are an agricultural product.
Yes.
Potentially, fish, the rights to fish is a separate field altogether.
Can I just ask, Paul brought up a suggestion, I don't know whether it would actually work. Can we just get hold of the local fire brigade and just say, can they come and spray the pond?
For a massive amount of money, did you do?
Well, I don't know.
Really?
I do.
Oh, you do? They won't?
Well, if you ask them to fill your swimming pool, you're talking hundreds of pounds.
Oh.
sort of thing.
Okay.
A tiny
Thank you
little
for
pool,
telling me that. I didn't know that.
You've got a hydrant in front of your house, haven't you? Yeah.
Yes, I saw the fire engine actually a couple of weeks ago
Yes,
outside there filling up.
So could we
It's
ask
worth
them
it,
to put
it's
a
worth a
pump
shout.
on that and just wait?
Just think about the
Sorry.
the pumping out, if that's what's causing the problem. But we have had one of the dry summers on record. If you look back over the last 25 years, we've had some very dry summers, and the pond has gone quite low. I can't remember who actually did it, but at some point somebody took the fish away, didn't they?
Ian
Yeah.
said the environment
taken away then.
agency took them away.
So they did accept their responsibility for the water and its contents then.
I don't think there are, well, when I spoke to them initially when it was dry, they weren't arguing that there was no kind of problem with ownership of the pond. It was just their resources. They just didn't have people to send to our pond when there was obviously the problem was.
So if there is an issue with, I don't think putting water in is going to help because it's just going to dissipate back.
It's temporary.
It's governed by the water table. If it's a question of aerating the water, then I've got some pumps, or someone's prepared to have it plugged in. We can perhaps lift the water and spray it. If it's to do with that, I don't know.
If you put fresh water and aerate it, we're going to get blue-green algae.
Right. Okay.
It's very difficult. You don't want to get blue-green algae in there
So
because
you
it's
need
highly
a well,
toxic.
you need a well, not fresh water.
Effectively a well, or to filter it through something to remove the chlorine, the fluoride, and whatever other bits and bobs they put into the water that we drink.
There isn't a well
So there's not really-
Reeves Ditch.
It's a real catch-22.
Yeah.
It's something we could have done with doing it at the beginning of summer rather than at the end of.
Well, perhaps the thing we want to flag here is that hopefully the levels will come up,
Yes.
and when they come up, we should then take some silt outs
Silt
if
outs.
we can, because that would help a lot. wouldn't it?
Yeah, we haven't done that pond for a long time. All those ponds haven't been done.
We do have people go in every year when they trim the banks and clear the flow in and flow out. And of course it's got a metal base to that pond, because it used to be where the wagons used to drive through. It's
Caused away with the metal base to that pond.
Interesting.
And so at the moment, well, what I heard last time, towards the edges the mud is quite deep, but in the middle it's not so deep. So you can actually, in a Wellington boot, you can actually get down onto the...
Actually waded across it, the waders, it's something just above your ankles now,
What's that?
the pond.
A minute.
But are you on mud? Or are you...
Well, the silt, the actual water level is only about this much, the rest is silt.
Somewhere down in that silt there is a metal surface. And so it would be good for the health of the pond to get some of that silt
I
out.
wonder if when the tree was felled it damaged the base. There was a tree felled on the pond 12 months ago.
On the far side, yeah.
It came down into the pond. I wonder if the base has been damaged by the tree.
That was done in May, wasn't it? Not this May, the May before. So that, I think there has been a fair bit of water in there.
Just a wonder.
But even if it had punctured through, it's not like a fish pond which has got a liner. It's still governed by the water table. So
Just a thought.
Could we, if we persuaded the Environment Agency to take the fish out, as they've done before, whilst the water's low, is a good time to actually take the silt down, because that's what we did with ours some years ago. When it was a low year, and then we...
if you can get all the fish out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fish actually in
There are.
We don't have fish.
Suppose carp are over 40 years old.
there.
So are we saying that we're just going to leave the fish there and hope the water rises, or are we going to say we're going to try and think of a solution so these fish don't die? Or will they not die?
Well, if it drops another 3-4 inches in the next week, they're not going to survive.
So, what's the solution? We can go round and round about water tables, we can say things go high, go low. We either sit here and go, right, the fish are going to die if it goes lower, or let's think of a solution.
Well, the chap called Alex Malcolm at the Environment Agency, I've been in communication with him, and he was saying that if we knew who owned the pond, they may be able to help.
Well, so we've got to do, I can tell them that they own it, it's pretty simple,
So
isn't it?
can we contact this Malcolm?
Yeah, but it's just a bit confusing because I've
was.
spoken to them directly earlier in the summer as well.
Have you got that on email, or is that just...
I've got contact details.
Joe's got the emails.
Yeah, I've got.
Is that because some, like, Paul's contacts them, but if the parish council contacts them, we own the bond, then they would accept it? Is that what I
Well, the thing is, Joe said,
But I've spoken to this Alex Malcolm as well, so I don't
could you maybe get a hold of him again and just say, Joe Perez is going to be in touch, he's parish clerk,
Yeah, maybe.
we own the pond.
Okay.
Will you take,
You know, we own the land.
or we own the land?
Yeah.
I will willingly do that. It's not a problem.
I think for the sake of the load of fish that are going to die,
I'm quite happy to contact them again and
Well, the herons
see if
in
they
the
can do that.
5:30 in the morning, there's 4 herons sitting on the
I bet they're having a good feast at the moment.
Yeah, my dogs are after them every morning.
Okay, so we'll leave it to Paul or
Right,
Joe.
so I'll go back to the
We'll go
A14. So are we going to ask the A14 to come and pump water back in, or is that not a good idea?
Yeah.
Is that the right time for the water?
Is that,
Well,
is that
it is,
gonna be-
because it's reservoir.
Yeah.
Well, but I think
Somewhere.
we should probably
Well, you-
pass the
Yeah,
rather
yeah,
than just go ahead and do it.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll speak.
Yes.
The last thing we want to do is
Confirm
try
that
and
it's
help
not-
people.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
And then what are we going to do about these guys that are fishing?
Do
We need to
the
come
EA
on.
know that we need to put in potentially have impacting it?
Yeah.
They do that.
Well, Alex Malcolm knows whether the guy that I spoke to at the beginning of the summer probably
It might be
didn't
worth
have
explaining
any.
that, and we don't think someone suggesting that this isn't just a drought thing. They
Yeah,
have to,
yeah.
and therefore there is this reservoir water around the corner if someone could, as a temporary measure to the corner,
Yeah.
what does this pay?
But also Waterway should be knowing that if the A14 is changing our water level,
Well, if that's the case, I would imagine the environment agency would go nuts.
Quite.
Because it's not just going to be affecting us, it'll be right across.
It's affecting all sorts of wildlife elsewhere.
yeah.
So it might be worth
It is probably just speculation, I think, to be honest.
I
Well,
think
it'd be worth bringing to attention.
Yeah.
And then you can confirm. Okay. Okay, done to death.
And still apply to the people who live there.
Yeah, but we also need to touch on the next part of that,
Yes.
which, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
which is the
okay.
Hilton Angling Club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know who this person?
I do, yeah.
I said initially I wasn't too sure whether she was wanting to start the angling club or just suggesting that one was formed.
I got the impression he was looking to start, but
Right. I worry about how it will change the face of the pond personally.
I'd be tempted to say, can you hang on to the sort out the ponds and
Yes.
fish?
Yes,
And we'll consider it at the next meeting.
because there was I don't know whether Joe, did you send it out to everybody? When I was checking up for tonight's meeting, you had a further response, didn't you?
yeah, I don't know, I didn't send that bit out.
What about the rules of the club?
Oh, no, the rules we got,
Yeah.
but there was some sobering comment. There.
This is one you want, this bit.
Yeah, I'm sure just you know what you're showing me. It's going to be on bigger print here. Yeah, supporting documents too. This is it. This is read it, response to parishioner from EA. Are we down?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take the name out.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so there's no problem at all about starting the angling club. If you start a small club, we would be, this is the EA saying this, we'd be able to offer help with any issues you may come across. We're able to move carp, though, as for some instance the pond continued to lose water, because obviously the fish might have a disease, so they wouldn't move them. However, they would be able to offer assistance with aeration, but they're saying that, but then if you did start this up, you may also be able to offer some funding towards habitat improvement down there. Again, they'd be looking for a 50-50 sort of match funding. They haven't got the money at the moment, but they would help the club if they could. Basically, what you would need to do would be, once you have registered the fishery, keyword there, you would just say what your aims for the water are. Explain one project, for example, desilting. Say how much this is going to cost and how much you can put forward. We usually ask for our contribution to be at least matched. But his final sentence is the one that sort of, but in essence, yes, we would be able to help you by setting a club up. By setting a club on there, it changes the pond from a small village pond into a fishery, and we can help.
Oh gosh.
Yes, I think
So the question
that's
is, do we want a fishery?
that's the sobering point.
You've got to come back to what's the problem we're trying to fix.
I think so.
Mm.
Yes.
The problem, there isn't a problem with fish generally. There's a,
Yes.
to your point, a lot of fish in there which are 40 years old.
Yes.
So we don't have a problem generally with adaptation for
Mm.
fish. It's a pretty good environment. We've got a short-term problem now which could be affected by interim work of the agency and a dry summer.
Mm.
That's
If
really
we're not
what
careful,
we're
we're trying to
doing.
fix a problem that doesn't exist. We've got,
Yes.
you know, it's correlation, not causation, potentially.
Yes. Yes. And let's face it, anybody can go and fish there.
Well,
Yeah.
we try and keep it.
Yes, I know, but I mean, we can't. We can't. Yeah.
But is it wise to actually suggest that there is no fishing at the minute because of the low water? Or actually, do we want them to hoik it off?
I don't think we can stop them, can we?
No, I don't think
Oh,
we
well.
will.
Fishing is becoming quite a hot thing because a lot of people are taking it up all
Mm.
of a sudden
Oh, yeah.
for some reason.
Really?
Yeah, so there was an article on the radio about it a couple of weeks back. And one of the biggest companies growing on the internet at the moment is selling fishing tackle.
No.
I thought fishing had always been popular. But
Yeah, well, I don't know. But anyway, so people pay to go. They
Right.
defend fisheries and places like that.
Yes.
They pay to go and fish carp. So it's a business. Now, if we are not too careful, we can finish up with 20 vehicles parked up and down there over the weekend. And it's not fair on residents. And it's not fair on some young lads in the village who might want to go down there and feel a bit
And it's
intimidated.
not a very
Cost for us,
big
but
pond, is
the
it?
people trading around it.
Absolutely.
It's not a lake.
I mean, it's not a lake,
It's not a very
precisely.
big area
It's
around
not
it.
a huge pond.
We've only got the
And they'll
ends.
start,
Back
sort of,
really.
it'll all start getting cleared everywhere, won't it? If there's more and more people walking and...
Well, there's 3 fishermen on there, John's right, on Sunday, and there was a van parked on the green, which is not supposed to be, and there was staggers along the bank on the roadside, and there's nothing growing there of any value, but it was all flattened to give themselves places to cast. So it was it's a precursor of what could happen if it became a
Fishing.
public club, you know, pretty much anybody.
It doesn't strike me as big enough, as you
No,
say.
it doesn't.
But it's close to that road. It's not sat in a place where it can have an amenity for vehicles and kit and so.
you think of most fisheries there.
Could we maybe put a nice little post and rail along there, which obviously is safety to stop people from falling in?
Yeah.
Well, there's a fence along the road.
Yeah.
It's open both ends. But there's a lot to this. I mean,
Yes.
obviously it's nice. It's an amenity. People, it'd be nice if somebody used it, but if you're not careful, it could just gallop away from us.
Yeah.
I think I'd rather get the fish a bit healthy and get them watered off and
So I agree, sort out the problem first and then that sort of thing.
and I think it's very useful that parishioners bring it to our attention of what else can we do to get the pond sorted. And I think the ideas you've come up with is brilliant, and let's work at them again. And the more parishioners that come and help us at the Parish Council to keep the pond in a good state, the better it will be.
Can I just ask a question? What if it
Sorry,
was-
I'm very deaf. You really
I'm
have to
sorry.
shout at me.
If it was your pond, what would you do next?
Next. It needs desilting.
Yeah.
It needs the bottles and cans and other debris removing from it. It's rotting and causing problems. And I'll be looking at ageing water, ageing tap water by the 100 gallon at a time. Aging for about a week. Ageing water in a big vat. Aging
Right,
it.
oh, I
and
see.
then
Distill it.
introducing it slowly, because you've got to get rid of all the chemicals that are in the tap water before you put it in, just to support the fish until we get rain.
Is that a very difficult thing to do, to age water?
You'd be better off taking
It's difficult to meter. If you're not metered supply, it's not too bad.
Or get the A14 to pump some water out of the reservoir and sprinkle it.
Even if they just put it in slowly, even if they just put it in via the the feed by the pumping station. Just gently put it into there and let it trickle down and into the pond.
That is all right for £10,000 community application issue before they can top it off.
But it desperately needs desalting because when the fish disturb the bottom, you can smell the bacteria.
No, we used to do it.
It's just reducing the oxygen levels of the water before long they'll start gasping. And they just say the herons are having a field day at the moment. They won't get the bigger carp, but they might kill them. It'd be a shame because they've been in there a long time. Part of the village.
So surely you desilt once the pond is filled again?
Yeah, probably you could do it once. We could desilt it once they've got the water levels back up. And we start digging the silt out now, it
Yeah,
won't.
they'll kill the fish.
Not on the fishermen.
No.
Okay.
So it does sound like you need to treat these as separate.
Yeah.
And I think whether we send a nice note back to the parishioner saying, thanks for the request for the Indian Club, but we feel
Our priority is sorting out the water level.
Yeah.
They may not be aware though of what the
It means, yeah, because it sounds a lot like to almost to set it up like as a social thing, which sounds like a nice thing, get more young people together and do something in the village for people to do. It's not that we're against that idea, it's the fact that it changes the usage almost, doesn't it?
Yes.
Just on support and everything around it.
Exactly. And variables and whatever.
okie dokie, thank you very much.
The idea of my friend was if we make it a angling club that can be policed rather than just have anybody turn up.
Oh, right, yes, what was that?
We got the guys that were here at the weekend weren't locals.
So can you limit
But
people,
when
if it's a
we-
club, can you stop people?
Well, if they've got licences and they've got the correct licence from the water authority and they've got
But they need that anyway, wouldn't they? They
Sorry?
need a licence anyway, wouldn't they? Even now they need a licence.
they should have a licence.
But the
They
question
should-
is, will
they should
anyone...
have- they should have a
enforce it?
licence.
Yeah.
It's about who's going to enforce it.
But they would,
It's
that's what I'm
It's enforcing it that's...
enforcing,
But if you get a licence from the Parish Council, would that be enough? As it's a private lake? That's a good way of controlling it.
It comes
You've
back
still
to
got
the
to,
police.
you've still
They
got
need
to go up
licences
and
today.
say, can you have your
And no
parish
one's turning
council
up to
fishing
saying, have you got your
licence?
licence? And them doing
But we
all that.
discussed this
We did
a while ago.
Yeah, and we said no one put yourself in harm's way in terms of going
Yeah,
in front of
yeah.
three people in a van and saying, well, where's your licence? You know, because most people would be uncomfortable doing that, I guess.
Perhaps before we go back, before we say no about it, well, we don't say no, have we? We say
No,
it's
we're
putting
just
it
saying,
on.
hang on a minute.
We haven't really sort of exercised it fully, have we?
Should we review this again next month a
Yeah.
little bit more? Because I think
If we
there's been a
concentrate
lot
on
of
the first
information.
And getting the pond back.
Get the pond back, but I think we should come back to the table about discussing this idea further.
If somebody was prepared to do a club for use for the village,
Yeah.
with the backing of the Parish Council and agreeing a few sort of terms, then that might be good, because then it would get the police, as you say.
Yeah.
And if there were
Put
regular
limits on the number of
villagers,
people around the pond at a
if
time.
there were regular
those type of
villagers
things.
using it,
Could
then
be
other
quite
people would
sensible.
turn up and there wouldn't be space for them to
That would be the
come.
ideal scenario where it's only used by villagers and anybody who's not from the villages encouraged to move on.
Yeah.
So it does sound like we could ponder between now and the next meeting.
Very good.
I'm sorry. It's quite interesting.
That's good. Okay, so we'll,
Can we pull that back to the next
Yeah.
meeting? then?
okay, thank you.
And maybe if you have any other colleagues.
Yes, he can't be here
it's
tonight, he
fine.
sends his apologies, he's in Santa Monica.
Oh, lovely.
So,
Shame.
hard life, I've seen pictures of the beach and so on. But he will be here next month.
And it would be interesting just to understand how you think you would be able to police it, e.g. stop people from not part of your club using it.
If it's a club of localers, they can local.
Or we could
they can
introduce
use
them to a
other-
club, but don't, no.
Anyway, I think we're
Great.
yes. Okay.
Right.
Item 5.2 is a request from a parishioner regarding wheelie bins.
So I don't quite understand this, because I thought we were requirements anyway. I think.
Exactly, but that's,
There
that's,
is, but
that's the
people
point.
aren't sticking to that, that's
Yes.
the problem.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
How do you enforce?
Well, at least she has come up with a suggestion that we put it into Spectrum. Because
No, that is
whether
a
it's
good
got
idea.
worse, I don't know. But it did get me spinning the dictionary.
I think it's just
Did
because
anyone
it's
else
the
spin the
summer, people
dictionary?
are on holiday, so they put them
I
out.
did know someone's been put our black bin out this morning.
Did you wheel it back in fast?
You very deep for mine out, I think. Next one is now.
It was the owner's fault, she put hers out.
You do though, you question something.
You do?
Tomorrow, but I'll just in case.
Yeah. Maybe you could, Joe, say to them in Spectrum, going on holiday and putting a bin out the day before actually tells people that you're not at home.
Ask a neighbour to pop out for it.
Yeah,
Yes.
Exactly.
because it's such an obvious one, isn't it? A bin out
Yes.
the day before.
But again, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's
Yes.
like planting on the green, it's like fishing in the pond. It just needs to be policed, but you can't really, can you?
I think it's more about, as we're saying with Spectrum, it's about encouraging, reminding and...
But I mean, presumably it's just, you could say it's HTC rules, which is makes space for clothes,
But
and also encourages
you can do with this policing thing. I mean, average success with my little stickers I put on windscreens to some people. And I do that quite a lot, and there's no real repeat offenders anymore.
Right.
And then there are people who do it, and then they get a stick, not a sticker, but a note.
Yes.
And then they tend not to come back again. Which is, so with some of these issues like the fishing or the bins or whatever,
So you're going to design a note that we can put on people's bins? No, I wasn't being
The
asked.
bin should be confiscated. That'd be even better, wouldn't it? Yes, and then someone phones up and says, we know your things. Go with the benches. Okay, so I mean, presumably, would you be okay if we were to add that into Spectrum?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think we've ever done that before, have we? On benches. I don't think we've ever had a comment like that. So
Put it on the website.
it's normally dog fouling that goes in there all the time, but this is a new one. So we'll do that. Okay.
And on our website.
Right.
And I've put it on the register.
Oh yes, you can.
Yeah.
Stick it on the website. can you?
On the website.
We okay with that?
Yep.
But for a short period. Not very well. Just 2 weeks. Yeah, exactly. Right. So item 6.1, authorised payments of any bills, including clerk's salary.
Cool.
So I'll just spin into that one.
Can I just ask Kieran a quick question about
Of course you
bills,
can.
because
I'll
I
give you a chance to.
sent you an email about them
Indeed.
mole thing.
Mole one.
I haven't put it on.
I'm sorry, I completely forgot to contact.
Oh right,
But I
okay,
will do.
so we don't know him anymore.
I think
No, he
probably-
hasn't been, has he?
Have you had any? Yeah, he has been.
Oh, he has?
Yeah. But I don't think he sent an invoice.
Oh right, okay, as long as I didn't want something
I'll-
being out
I
of
will
pocket.
chase him.
Okay, that's fine.
Can I have his details then? Because he's managed to send them into my garden now. I've never had them in the garden before.
He takes them away with him. normally.
Really?
Just a moment.
Mm.
They're quite good at counting, they block off both ends and find the rest too.
Amazing. I'll get him in the winter.
There's a nice line of gloves.
Okay, so the bills being presented for payment are 664 John Carter, with an additional £40 for the cricket pitch, which is obviously just starting, sadly. Wendy Oldfield for the nitrogen oxide diffusion tubes.
Oh, yeah.
How is it going to go for?
Recharging them.
Do you know offhand? That's.
I think this is the third lot, isn't it?
I need to check how often that was
Yeah.
coming up and what results we're getting. Be nice, wouldn't it? Maybe the next meeting.
Yeah.
So I'll put results on the website of those up to the last but one. We have the analysis back from the nitrogen tubes.
You've got it back.
But, well, yeah, they have to go to the labs, get the studies
Yes.
and sent back. So I've put up 2 sets of results going back to earlier in the year on the website and under environmental. And they're done. They're replaced every 2 months because they have a shelf life of how long you can keep them in storage before you have to send them back.
David, the results be sent to us?
Yeah,
Yeah.
put it on the website. Just look on the website.
Yeah, but can they, I mean, as we're paying for them, so can the Parish Council have?
I'll send you a link to where you can download them from.
Yeah. Well, Wendy's Oh, you got Wendy,
yeah,
yes,
I'll
haven't you?
contact Wendy. and
Yeah.
ask
Give
her
her
to-
the money, yeah. Yes, excellent. Bernie's been out and about, June, July, August. His Heidi's. The Wicksteed survey, I think we've all agreed at 54, but that is just approval. Lighting services, 153. Conway tree specialist, tree work, 620. What was he doing there? Was that one down by the
It was
pavilion?
yeah.
Yeah. That's about a month ago, isn't it? Ecotricity, £8.87, and a clerk's salary, 584. So, can I have one copy that I will propose as a payment? Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Sarah seconding. All those in favour? Good. Thank you. That's the clerks and the payments. Yeah, fine. Right, 6.2. I presume it's down to you, Joe.
Yeah, well, I just...
Expiration of invoices following account being in credit.
Well, I just wanted to put this in the record because it's got a bit confusing because we credit with Ecotricity towards the end of last financial year. So a few of our invoices that have been going out being taken from that rather than direct debits coming out of our account. So it's just made it a bit complicated. So it was just to say we had a credit of £154.30 and charges of £14.32 from the 7th of March to the 23rd of May.
Yeah.
Which left us at £139.98 in credit, which was then refunded back last month. So
Oh,
we're
okay.
now back to
Reasonable amount.
so they're actually debiting the amount again now rather than taking out the credit. That's just really to have it on record, so it makes it a bit easier when it comes to audit. Yes.
Right on. Yeah. Good. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. And 6.3 is monies received. We had a VAT rebate, which presumably is all last year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of just over £1,000. Cricket Club utilities, £21.05. So that's presumably the Cricket Club deciding how much is theirs, is it? And giving us the money.
Yeah, we kind of worked it out
Yeah,
between us.
that's good. Yeah. And Feast utilities, they gave us some money, £9.29.
Yeah.
That's very good, isn't it? Is that much they
That's
use
Yeah.
in a week? It's quite
Well,
a lot.
that's from last year, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's about what they normally
That's fine.
use.
Good. Okay, so that's the money that came in this month. Okay, and I think that probably wraps up the official items. So next is 7, council items, information only, no discussion and no decision can be made. Left or right? Sarah? No? Anne?
Yes, I have one. Could be, because we were all elected back in whenever it was,
Mate.
and given how tough things are generally and everywhere, I just wonder whether we ought to have a kind of 3-4 year plan and set of priorities as to where we put our energy and effort. Because like with every authority at every level, you just can't do everything, and maybe there are some things more important than others. I would like to have that discussion, and I've got a second one.
Okay.
We said at a planning committee meeting that we would that we would create some policy statements and guidance, and or sign it off at the next policy meeting. So I'm just kind of flagging
It has been done. What's it? I'm not discussing. I'm telling you. It's been done.
But not
Responding to
shared.
all
Can we
items.
put it on
Okay.
the agenda for the next
Yes.
planning meeting,
It might-
which is
yes.
coming up?
Yes, good idea.
Although I might be.
Yes. It'll be on the next planning meeting. You last. No, you? Okay. The only other thing to mention is that Jo's suffering with her PC laptop, and so we don't think we can approve the spend tonight because presumably we're talking of hundreds.
Probably.
But I presume the general consensus is, as it's X years old, it's in need of update. So Jo is looking for a new one. So I think one, she'll be suffering the next month, so there may be a slight hiccup in stuff coming through, and I think it'll be on the next agenda for proposing a big spend. Let's just see. Okay, thank you very much, and we'll see you on the 11th. meeting.
Not me, certainly.
You're
I've given